This episode takes place at this crazy party, dude.
She was known to throw those parties, though. I'm not going to bullshit you.
Gold Uzi. This is like an orgy of drugs.
Okay. If I'm lying, I'm flying. Yes. I had a 6th birthday party on a cruise ship. They were loading the petting zoo with animals, ponies, and then come the clowns. And then I see all the strippers with the sailor hats and the sailor uniforms.
I'm sorry, there were strippers at the 6-year-old birthday party.
And I remember my brother smacking them in the ass like one by one.
Are we talking about the petting zoo animals or the strippers?
The strippers, Billy. The strippers.
Griselda Blanco, a flamboyant woman nicknamed La Madrina, or Godmother.
A Colombian drug baroness.
A cocaine queenpin of sorts.
I would characterize her as the epitome of a cocaine cowboy.
Más conocida como la reina de la cocaína.
Griselda Blanco has been charged with 3 murders.
Griselda Blanco.
Griselda Blanco.
For the last 20 years, I've watched other people tell the story of my mother and our family. Now it's my turn to tell the real story.
This is The Real Griselda, Episode 5, with Michael Corleone Blanco, author of My Mother, the Godmother, now available at mymotherthegodmother.com. Also repping
Blanco Family Fincas and Packaging Co. By the way, I'd like to give a shout out to our new sponsors. Xtini, a refreshing twist on coffee and martini blend. I love it. Actually, I do like it.
Hashtag better than bazuko.
Yup, way better than bazuko.
Good segue into Episode 5 of the Netflix series Griselda, starring Sofía Vergara.
Take your fucking clothes off.
This episode is wild. I mean, as I keep talking about the gonzo Cocaine Cowboys fan fiction, the kind of narco sci-fi world that this takes place in, kicks it up another notch in this episode. We see John Roberts.
The one, the only, Griselda Blanco.
Basically as Ellis in Die Hard.
Hey, babe, I negotiate $1 million deals for breakfast. I think I can handle this Euro trash.
I don't know that he ever met your mom because he got into the game a little later in the 80s.
He did. He met her, I think, twice, and they did party a lot in the same area.
I went to Rafa and I said, "What's her story?" And Rafa said, "Oh, no, you're not getting involved with her." And I said, "Why not?"
Rafa didn't let a lot of his plugs interact with my mother.
Griselda, don't do this. I will pay you whatever the fuck you want.
Get on all fours and start barking like a fucking dog.
Poor John Roberts, he's probably turning over in his grave right now. May he rest in peace.
Could not have happened to a nicer guy, I'll have you know. Did she ever make him strip naked and bark like a dog on all fours?
No.
Are you sure?
100% positive.
Okay, not at any of your birthday parties or anything? Okay. Who else do we see in this? Al Singleton, the Blade, kind of pops in from Team Centac. In real life, Al Singleton and June Hawkins, who is the female hero cop of the Netflix series, they are married, or at least they live together, cohabitate in real life happily in retirement. This episode of Griselda opens, once again, I believe, with the mutiny. Shout out to the mutiny. I'm rocking my mutiny drip today.
I need one of those.
And your brothers kind of take center stage. They're a little bit different in real life than they are in the series. Osvaldo kind of stays a child. Dixon is kind of the wild man here, and then Uber's kind of like a buttoned-up, kind of conservative kid.
You know what? They almost hit the needle on the head, but not quite. But yeah, in their youth, I guess, my brother Dixon was not a cokehead. He was into cannabis. But yes, here in Miami, I guess he was a little bit on the tougher, wild side. He was the big brother. So he would always, my brother was the one raised with my mother. In my book, I explain the different roles and dynamics that we all had being part of the Trujillo Blanco brothers and pues me, myself, the Sepulvedas. Dixon was always the tough guy in our family, to tell you the truth. And
what does that mean?
My brother would tell a killer, listen, you think you got balls? Yeah, you let me know, and we can shoot it out right now, because just because I'm my mother's son doesn't mean that I'm a rich boy. He remembered being poor, which my other two brothers, well, Ubed kind of remembers it. But Chiqui never saw, Chiqui lived in the lap of luxury. I lived in the lap of luxury. A lot of the people around us were kind of scared of my brother Dixon because he was this short, little, bear-looking guy. He was a black belt in judo, and he would test you straight up. Even if you were a killer, he would test you if you were around my mother. Matter of fact, Dixon is the one that let my father come into our home and propose to my mother. But he was always the man of the house, head of the family.
What do you mean he let your father, Dario
So
Sepulveda?
when they fell in love in Colombia, Dario was courting my mother. But he wasn't allowed in the house or anything because, remember, the 3 brothers are from Trujillo. And then with time, my brother Dixon said, okay, come on. Come into the house. You can start staying over. You've been here for a while.
And was your mother still married to Alberto Bravo at that time?
Yes, on papers in New York.
Chiqui is Osvaldo, your third half-brother, your mother's third son, known as Ozzy in the series. Did your mother ever call him Ozzy?
Nunca. Never.
Chiqui was a badass. You have mentioned that time and time again since we've started this show. People that we had known as your mother or your father's enforcers were really working for him.
Yeah.
And he was moving weight, and they were helping him enforce that trade, making sure that people respected him and that people paid him.
He took Rafico's store. You got to understand that. So Chiqui was a prodigy of Los Ochoas, Rafico, Pablo, and Griselda Blanco. This kid was basically molded into becoming a drug trafficker.
Episode 5, the Netflix series, says 3 years later. So we're basically, I'm trying to keep up with the timeline of the show. It's 83-ish, let's say. Talk about the rise of your brother, his move to California, where I think that's really where he...
Yeah, that's where he escalated to this super narco that is now known as the Prince of Cocaine.
And everybody was his clients in L.A. He was like the drug dealer to the stars.
Well, everybody knew that a new lady had come into town that was Mama Coca. But my mother had become, by that time, an urban myth. So you could never meet my mother. You could meet Chiqui, Uwid, or Dixon, but you would never have a one-on-one with Griselda, or you would never say hi to her wherever. She wasn't in public sight. We were hiding out. Sometimes I'd be with her, sometimes I'd be with my brothers. But that gave Chiqui the authority to become the #1 distributor of the family. And in California, he was given routes that actually belonged to Gacha. And Gacha had, befriended this kid that had the gift. My mother would say, el don de la gente, that Chiqui and myself were born con el don de la gente, the gift of people.
How old is he when he effectively becomes his own boss?
Well, his first 100 kilos was at the age of 15, 14 and a half, and they were given to him by my brother, Dixon, and he ships them from Medellin, comes here, meets the plane, unloads it, and sells his first 100 kilos. He was turning 15 years old.
Do you have memories from your childhood about your brothers in Miami and how big and powerful they were?
Super memories. My brother Chiqui really lived that life. He lived in the movie. He would walk around with 12, 16 people. Like, who is this man that tells all these grown-ass men what to do and is worth hundreds of millions of dollars? And how old are you? My brother died at the age of 26. He saw something that a lot of narcos and members of Medellin drug cartel, maybe other cartels, didn't see. How can we tap into the Black American market and make this work on different levels? And at the same time, when they reached Beverly Hills, California, the Bay Area, he knew how to find the correct distributors. And then he knew how to supply the limelight with the drug. Stars, singers of the time, pop artists of their time. And he learned how to be their neighbors and buy these mansions. He was a lavish child. I guess my mother was a big influence in Chiqui because everything he did was luxurious.
I know this gets a little bit ahead in the Netflix timeline. I wanted to know about Osvaldo in Cali and what he was doing, who he was interacting with, how he blew up into the stratosphere.
He becomes the #1 distributor for Los Ochoas, and they give him the California routes, but then Pablo starts feeding him to... Gacha has an agreement with my mother to only let my mother distribute. But now Chiqui is the breadwinner, and my mother basically sits in the house where later on she was arrested at and just collects her tax money, her percentages.
Semi-retirement at that point?
Semi-retirement. And Chiqui gives the Bay Area to my brother Dixon, which we already lived there. We lived in Morgan Hill, California. He befriends this beautiful lady, and they have a beautiful love relationship for years. But she was an older lady, but she just happened to be also the #1 female cocaine distributor in San Francisco.
Just happened to be.
It just happened to be.
What a coincidence.
She sees this kid pull up in a Rolls Royce, iced out Rolexes. The next day it's an Aston Martin. The next day it's a Maserati. And then everybody starts talking about, oh, that's the Prince of Cocaine. He lives in Beverly Hills. That's Griselda's son. And next thing you know, they were, I think, pushing 500 kilos a month in San Francisco and the neighboring areas.
Miami's one thing. You're talking about Beverly Hills, Hollywood,
Yes.
Los Angeles, the Bay Area. This is some A-list shit, right? Who is he rubbing shoulders with?
Oh, well, my brother Dixon was a rock star hippie, so he would rock out and have jams with the likes of Prince. Chiqui was known to visit Neverland, and he was known to say hi to Michael. I remember when I was a kid, my brother Uber making fun of my brother Chiqui because of the relationship that he had with Michael Jackson, because they're like, hey, what's up? It's a little weird. And my brother Chiqui would say, nah, Michael's a good dude. And he bought a ranch that was close to Neverland in the same acreages. In Beverly Hills, he was quite popular because all the people knew that he was the new cocaine plug, that nobody would sell so much cocaine like him. So he was just with all the rock stars. I think he dated Vanity from Last Dragon. So every time I hear Nas say, in the Benz wagon, could it be Vanity from Last Dragon? And to me, it's like, yeah, my brother did that. He was with all these rock stars of their time and all these famous comedians. And a matter of fact, I think the house that he was arrested in, he had just bought from a famous comedian.
You've name-checked a lot of really interesting people.
Yes, I have.
These are friends of your brothers? Clients of your brothers?
Let's just say they were probably friends of the lifestyle.
Oh, friends of the
You get it?
Okay. Friends of the lifestyle.
Yeah.
The latter half of this episode takes place entirely at one event, basically. It's like the wedding scene in The Godfather. It's all at a birthday party that Griselda is throwing for Dario. In real life, these would be your parents. It is also the first appearance of a young Michael Corleone Blanco in the birthday party scene. There is Michael for the first time at this fucking crazy party, dude. And I mean,
she was known to throw those parties, though. I'm not gonna bullshit you. My 6-year-old party,
gold Uzi. There's a fucking. It's basically like an orgy of drugs and sex.
But who did the golden Uzi really belong to? Was it a gift for Dario, or was it gifted to who?
In the show, in this Netflix show, it's a gift from Griselda to your father.
But from your knowledge, it was a gift to who? It was a gift to Griselda from Alberto, and it was in an oak box that was engraved in gold and had emeralds. But the Uzi itself was engraved also with diamonds and emeralds, and the clips did have 14-karat gold bullets. It was a gift from Alberto when she became La Madrina, and the box said, para la madrina.
So there's little like real life details borrowed and integrated, but not quite in the exact context.
It was given to her for a birthday, but it was after their biggest load at the time.
In the world, that would have been a decade earlier,
Yes,
right,
sir.
than the
Yes.
show. Okay, I got you. But the parties, Michael, are they this crazy? And are the boys or the kids just around?
If I'm lying, I'm flying, yes. I mean, yeah, they were pretty crazy.
You just said something about a 6th birthday party for you?
Yeah, I had a 6-year-old birthday party right here in Miami Port on a cruise ship.
So this is not a yacht. This is a cruise ship.
I see another boat with livestock, with animals, ponies, goats.
Is it Noah's Ark? What the hell is this?
And they were loading the petting zoo to the top deck where we were throwing my birthday party, right?
Right, because it was a 6-year-old's birthday party.
Then come the clowns, and then I see all the strippers with the sailor hats and the sailor uniforms.
I'm sorry, there were strippers at the 6-year-old birthday party.
Uber Blanco was the playboy. As the night transpired and everybody started getting probably more fucked up,
Probably.
I remember them being with lesser clothes, and I remember my brother smacking them in the ass like one by one, and I would think to myself, it's quite normal.
Are we talking about the petting zoo animals or the strippers?
The strippers.
Oh, okay, all right. Just wanted to clarify
The strippers,
that.
Billy, the strippers.
In episode 2 of the Netflix series, there is this kind of like boat party, this yacht party. They're like giving away cocaine. So that's kind of, so your mom did throw some boat parties then.
Yeah, but I doubt she would have a boat party to distribute fucking grams of cocaine, which is the number one distributor of metric tons in the world.
Fair enough. But again, there's like these little details that do kind of overlap or might have been inspired by real life. But John Roberts was not naked on all fours barking like a dog.
he was not.
Want to make sure. You
May he
never
rest in
fact-check
peace,
that.
man.
Never
John Roberts
fact-check.
was a good dude, huh?
He was a wild
I heard stories
character.
about him at Tootsie's in his later years.
Dude, he married a dancer.
Oh, good for him.
Married and had a son.
Because Miami.
Living the dream, dude.
Yep.
Birthday party scene is extensive. It is wild. One of the things that happens, your mother is doing a lot of freebasing.
My mother smoked bazuko in her younger years when my father and her were first dating and then got married. They would, they'd probably get fucked up. Back then, bazuko wasn't crack, and it was considered a rich man's drug until it ravished society and people started seeing the level of addiction that it had. But my mother knew about that since Medellin. Like I said, the first crack epidemic was in Medellin, Colombia.
Did she smoke it though in cigarettes or in like
cigarettes, just like everybody else did, just like you proved in your documentary?
Because they had like pipes, like a glass pipe in this.
They made my mother look like a baser, and she was far from that. And that's another urban myth that they say, oh, she was always junkied out, she was always on drugs, and
they said it made her paranoid and
well,
more violent.
It does do that to people, but let's just say it did do it to her, and she did start spiraling out of control. And I speak about that in this beautiful book, My Mother, the Godmother. But how long could you keep that up? The only time I remember my mom partying and having a drink when we're in California is in the pictures you see in this book on Mother's Day. Since I don't remember anything else. And the parties stopped in Miami. Well, at least for her. Not for my brothers. They were balling out their minds. If you got, 200 kilos and 100 of those kilos are base, son kilos de base from Peru, and it hasn't been crystallized. And they've been smoking base for the last 2 decades in Medellin. So then, the bazuko ravished Miami, it ravished Queens, and it was a drug of preference for a while, and it was even considered elegantly until it became crack. And then it destroyed everything.
I want to talk about an event that happens in this episode towards the end. They kind of try to conflate it or make it a part of your mother's kind of downward spiral in terms of addiction, and that is the accidental shooting of Johnny Castro, who was, I think, about 3 at the time. In the show, they had Dixon. In real life, I believe it was Cheeky. It was Osvaldo, who has some sort of conflict with Chucho Castro, who was at one point an enforcer for your mother and or father.
Quiero que mates a Chucho.
And then sends Rivy and possibly some others to murder Chucho Castro, and they accidentally kill I believe was 3 at the time. It's often said 2. I believe Johnny Castro was 3 years old. What do you know about how that went down, that tragedy?
Can I tell you something, Billy? I grew up in Medellin with Dixon and Michael, Chucho's other kids. And out of respect for them and out of respect for the memory of that child, I'd rather not elaborate on that.
How do you feel when it is depicted, well, in the documentaries, Rivy says,
I mean, she wasn't sorry about it. She's like she didn't give a shit.
Mess with my son, I mess with his son.
That's a lie, and he knows it as well. Because I have testimony of people that were in the room when she slapped the shit out of him for it. And she said, look at Maikito. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
In the show, Sofía Vergara as Griselda is very pensive, tracing the sky with her cigarette. She
did have a movement with her hand, but not like that. But she did smoke cigarette and bazuko elegantly. It's pretty good how they got that. I mean, I'm sure she wouldn't do the thing like that, but she did have this maneuver about her.
In the series, she's very pensive. She's very emotional. She cries a lot in the show.
I can count the times I saw that lady cry.
I was going to say, how many times have you seen her? She cries like every 10 minutes in the Netflix show.
We would cry every night and every day when the visiting was over. But
you mean when she was locked up?
When I was visiting her. But like I said, when she was free, and even then, while she did her 20-plus years in prison, she wouldn't want to make me cry. Every night when those guards ripped me from her hands and I had to cross those fucking 8 gates to come back to society, you know, I'd cry on the way home. She would cry, but the truth is, I can count the times that something else made her cry. She was a strong, rigid woman.
So not a lot of regrets then? Like she didn't kind of think about...
She did. She did have regret. You know, I think, I say it a lot, you know, when that change, when her glare changed, when her eyes changed, when her aura started to change, and it was after the death of Chiqui. She was never the same after that. Before Chiqui's death, I would say, Gordita, what you gonna do when you jump out? It's only a couple years away. 1993 is right around the corner. Are we back? And she'd tell me, Papi, as soon as I leave this bitch, I'm gonna flood it again. And I used to be like, what? No, but didn't you learn anything from this? She's like, yeah, I learned that I want to go get some money as soon as I get out of here and flood this country again. And then fast forward a couple years later, her son gets assassinated in Colombia. And then it was, Gordita, what are you going to do now? She's like, mijo, I just want to live life and you know, be with my kids, and I don't want any problems with anybody. And I saw that change in her glare.
So that vulnerability, we'll call it, that the character in the Netflix show has in when she's working in the business, that emotion, that vulnerability, that regret, that stress that was not her when she was working.
No. That 6-year-old party, on the way to the party on the boat, as we're surrounded, you know, by our brothers and then the other boats with the bodyguards and everything, I looked at my mother as the wind was hitting this lady, going right here to Palm Island. And I saw the strongest woman I've ever seen in my life.
The deal you offered, I'll take it.
At the end of episode 5, the Netflix series, the Carmen character, who we've talked about before, definitely inspired by someone, a real person, basically fully flips. And one of the things they talk about, because in the series up until that point, she is the travel agent, but they reveal, which I think is accurate, that her name is on a stash house somewhere. Yes. And that is, I mean, you said this was kind of the real estate, less the travel agent, more of the real estate woman, right?
And everything in between.
Okay. So I wanted to ask, though, about the stash houses specifically. Mm-hmm. How did the operation work? I just want to understand the Miami operation at that point in the early 80s.
There was prime caletas that Rafico had. There was caletas that my mother had, and most members of the Medellin drug cartel had their personal caletas that their distributors will hold down, or el caletero. For example, my cousin Junior's father was our caletero in the Bay Area, and when he was a kid here in Miami too. I think they had a house in Kendall, and that yellow house would hold a lot of Chiquis things. But then when it wasn't a caleta, then it was a house that would house our female cousins and our aunt, and they would live there and stuff like that. But the network of las caletas and the stash houses were separate to the family stash houses. For example, my mother and my father's house in Boca, not even my brothers knew about it until we were there. Those were the family stash houses. Now, Las Caletas, where they would have the 1,000 kilos, 500 kilos, 600 kilos, that most of it probably belonged to the Medellin drug cartel, were all over the city. Our homes that we hid in, Coconut Grove, Key Biscayne, Palm Island, and the penthouses in Fort Lauderdale. And then we had the house in Bal Harbor, or the apartment in Bal Harbor next to Rafico. And
your mother's houses and your mother's kilos, who were those going to? Who were her clients? Who were picking those up? Or who?
Everybody. At the beginning, it was just her clients from New York, Chicago. It's crazy because a couple years ago, my wife and I started getting messages from a certain gentleman in Kansas.
Okay.
And his son started sending me messages. Michael, You don't know me. My name is Chris so-and-so, or let's not say Chris, whatever his name is, so-and-so. And he says, I want to thank you. And I want to thank you on behalf of my grandfather and my father. If it wasn't for your mother, we wouldn't have what we have here in this state. We wouldn't have homes, businesses, anything. So I want to thank you, and I think you needed to hear that from somebody else because I see the hatred you get online. And I want you to know that we're grateful for that. Maybe one day when I'm in Miami, we can have dinner. My father and Gramps were great friends of your mother. And I said, in Kansas? And he goes, yes. As a matter of fact, my father tells a story when he went with my grandfather to Miami. And your mother pulls up in a Rolls Royce with your father and 2 other bodyguards. And I asked him, if that's true, what was the color of the Rolls Royce? I know the color. And he told me the exact color. He said blue, and it had tinted windows. That's what my father would tell me, that they were scared shitless as they sat in there and closed their first 10-kilo deal. And then after that, he goes, after that, every month, your mother would front them an extra load. And within a year, we became wealthy, and now I have what I have. That warmed my heart because a lot of people want to talk, and like I said, I'm not here to condone drug trafficking or the world of narco in any form or fashion, but it does warm your heart when people tell you that the food they ate on that table, how they fed their children, or how they paid their bills was because of Griselda Blanco.
Coming up in episode 6, we will not only wrap up our reaction to the Netflix series, but I'm going to we're going to have this conversation publicly. Parts of it we'll have for the first time ever, even you and I, about the accuracy of the Cocaine Cowboys documentaries, about your mother and your family's reaction to the documentaries. And we've been calling everybody else out. Now it's your chance to call me out and talk about how right or wrong we got it. That's coming up in episode 6 of The Real Griselda with Michael Corleone Blanco, author of My Mother the Godmother, now available at mymotherthegodmother.com, and
powered by Blanco Family Fincas and Packaging Co. And while you're at it, go get yourself an X-Tini. It's a beautiful blend of coffee and martini. Smooth blend, by the way.
I enjoy watching you do the live reads.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to get you down the next one.
Check out Cali Gold Custom.
Ace Deuce will bust you loose.